Hi everyone, it's Andy from Tales from the Hart, and thank you for joining me for another Folklore Thursday. Now, Folklore Thursday today is coming from a Viking longhouse, and yes, it's a lovely place to sit in by the fire and tell stories, especially this story that I'm going to tell you next. Once upon a time, there were a family of farmers that lived by the sea. A mother, a father, and a young boy. And they worked hard tilling the fields and sailing out to sea on the boat they kept in their boathouse and bringing back fish and trading. And when they weren't working hard, they kept busy with their hobbies. The father's favourite hobby was playing taffel. And long into the night would he play against his friends and his neighbours, often winning. On winter nights he would do it beside the fire while drinking ale and mead. And on summer nights, outside letting the cool ocean breeze waft over him. And it was on one of those summer nights that as he sat there with his taffel board, drinking his ale and looking out to sea, he heard a rumbling in the distance. He was getting a visitor, not a neighbour or a friend to come and play taffel with him, but a giant. He stood up, swallowing nervously, wondering what this giant wanted. The giant stopped and looked down and smiled at the man. "I would like to play you at taffel." Not all giants were evil, and it would be quite a thing to say he'd played a giant at a game of taffel, and so the man agreed. What stakes shall we play for, he asked, because often he would play for small stakes against his neighbours and friends, and he would win himself things like a handful of coins or a bushel of wheat or two. And he thought he might get a little richer out of this. The giant pondered this just for a moment and answered, "The winner shall have what they want of the possessions of the loser." The farmer thought on this. He wasn't a rich man. He didn't have many possessions a giant might want, one of the Jotun might want. But he imagined this giant would probably have a few things he wanted. And as I said, he was good at taffel. "Agreed then," he said. And so they played, the man sitting on his stool, the giant dragging over a tree trunk and sitting upon that. And long they played into the night, and it was the hardest game that farmer had ever played, and eventually the giant did win. The farmer stood and bowed. "Congratulations," he said. "My thanks," said the giant. "Now for my prize." "Of course," he said, "it was a game worth playing. What would you have of mine?" "Only," the giant smiled slowly, "your son." The farmer didn't know what to say to this. He and his wife tried to dissuade the giant. They tried to plead with him. Anything they would give up, anything, their cottage, their boat, anything. Just leave them their son. The giant only laughed. "As you have pleaded so kindly, and you played such a good game, I will say this to you. I will give you one last night with your son. Tomorrow I shall come and claim him. And if you have hidden him in the night so well that I cannot find him tomorrow, I will renounce my claim and you may keep him." And with that, the giant stood and walked back off into the hills. Now, the couple were distraught. They didn't know what to do. They cried, they sobbed, they wrung their hands together, wondering what to do as they gathered around the fire. And it was then that the wife looked up. "Odin," she said, "we must pray to Odin, All-Father, chieftain of the gods. He will help us." And so they prayed. Nothing happened. And so they sat sleepless and waited for dawn. And just before dawn broke, a knock upon the door. They feared that it was the giant come early to claim his prize. When they opened the door, though, it was not a giant, but an old grey wanderer in a wide-brimmed hat with one eye. It was Odin himself. "I have heard your prayers," said Odin, "and I have come to help you if I may. I will hide your son so well that the giant may not find him." Thankful, the couple gave Odin their son, and Odin transformed him into a tiny little grain of wheat. And he took that wheat and hid it in the furthest corner of their field in an ear of wheat, and then walked away. All too soon the giant came bounding upon the hills, looking about the cottage. "I have come for your son, but I see he is not here. You have hidden him. I will see if I can find him." And he walked outside the cottage, and he looked about, and he sniffed the air. And as if by some unnatural sense he had, he walked straight through the cornfield. And as he went, he tore up great bundles of wheat by the roots. With a brief look at them, he threw them over his shoulder as he went all the way to that furthest corner of the field. And there he plucked that one stem of wheat. Looking at it, he plucked off grain by grain by grain by grain until one was left. And he peered at it. "Ha! I believe I have found your son." Odin, at this point, took pity on the couple and sent a great burst of wind that blew the grain from the giant's hand over towards his parents, where it transformed back into a boy. The giant laughed once more as Odin spoke upon the wind. "I have done what I can. You must help yourselves now." The giant seemed pleased at the game. "Well, you did well, but not well enough to fool me. I shall give you another chance. Tomorrow I shall return for your son, and if you have hidden him well enough that I may not find him, you may keep him." And off he stomped into the hills. Once more, the boy's parents found themselves around the fire in their farm, wringing their hands, worried to the core what they would do, looking fearfully through the gaps to let in light as the sun sunk and the last rays of light shone through before nightfall. And it was then, looking at that ray of light, that the woman looked up. "Honir," she spoke, "the god of light, Odin's brother, he will help us. He is good and pure." And so they prayed to Honir. Nothing happened. It was then, as the sun was peeking above the hills to the east in the morning, as the light began to trickle through those windows, the wife of the farmer looked out. And as she looked out of her door, there stood, like a beam of sunshine, Honir. "I have heard your pleas," he said, "and I will help you if I can, and find a place to hide your son, a place so hard to find that the giant may overlook him." And so, thankful, they gave Honir their son. And the farmers wrung their hands and wondered what he would do now. And Honir turned him into the feather of a swan. And there he went down to the stream and placed it upon a swan's breast as it swam around. And then he walked away towards the sun. Soon, bounding over the hills, came the giant. Scowling around the cottage, he announced loudly, "I cannot find your son here. You must have hidden him. I wonder if you have hidden him better than you did yesterday. I will find him if I can." And so, looking around, he sniffed the air, and as if by some unnatural sense, he went towards the stream, wading out into the stream, which would have come up to the necks of you or I. Well, this just came up to the shins of the giant. He plucked the swan from the water, wrung its neck, and then began to pick off the feathers one by one, tossing them away as he did, until finally one feather remained upon that swan's breast, soft and downy. He looked at it and laughed. "Ha ha! I believe I have found your son." It was then Honir took pity on the couple and sent a gust of wind that blew the feather from the giant's hand, and it wafted upon that wind and floated down next to the couple where once more it became their son, their young boy. "I have done all that I can for you," spoke Honir. "You must now find the rest of the way yourselves." The giant once more roared with laughter. "Ha! That was better, but not good enough. One more chance I will give thee. One more chance to hide your boy so well that I may not find him. Otherwise, tomorrow I shall take him with me." And off he stomped into the hills. That night was the worst for the parents. They sat and cried about the fire, wondering what to do. The two most powerful, benevolent gods they could think of had abandoned them. Well, not abandoned them, but had failed to help them. And they did not know what to do. And it fell silent as they looked into the fire as it died low. Leaning forward to kindle those last flames, "Loki," spoke the mother. "Excuse me," said the father. "Loki, we should pray to Loki, the god of fire and mischief." "Why on earth would he help us?" asked the father. "All I know," said the mother, "is that we must try, and I cannot think of who else could help us." And so they prayed to Loki. Suddenly the fire burst into life, and from those flames rose Loki, the trickster god of fire. "I have heard your pleas," he announced. "Give me your boy, and I shall hide him as best as I can so that the giant may not find him in the morning." And so, nervous but not knowing what else to do, the couple gave Loki their son. And Loki transformed him into the tiniest little fish's egg. And he took that egg out to sea, and he placed it inside a fish's roe, a fish's egg sac, inside a fish's belly. And then, coming back to land, he walked off and hid. Soon morning came, and the giant was stomping over the hillside once more. "Here I am," he called. "One last chance. If I find your boy today, I shall take him and keep him." And he looked about the cottage. "I see you have hidden him from me. Let us see if you have hidden him better than the last 2 times. And he stalked around, sniffing the air, and as if by some unnatural sense, he made towards the ocean side, towards the coast. Standing on the sand, he looked out over the sea, and with a small smile, he turned to the farmer. "Bring me your boat." And so the farmer told him that it was just up there by the boathouse, and so the giant walked and peered into the boathouse. "It is far too small for me. Fetch it for me." Now, they didn't really want to fetch him the boat to go and find their son, but they didn't really want to offend a great big giant either. And so, husband and wife dragged that boat out down to the shore, and the giant climbed inside. Just as he climbed inside, ready to set off, Loki, disguised as a fisherman, came running down the hillside. "Wait, wait," he called. "Take me with you. I know these waters and I can row well." "I see why not," said the giant, pleased for the help and the company on his fishing trip. And so Loki hopped into the boat, and off they sailed, bobbing across the waves out to sea until they were around a mile out. A speck in the distance for the farmer and his wife wringing their hands nervously upon the shore. And it was there that the giant baited a hook, cast it out into the water. And soon he was pulling fish up. Every few moments he seemed to bring up a new fish, but instead of keeping them or eating them, he peered at them and threw them back over. Cast out, caught one, peered and threw it back over, all the while, until a particular fish came up and he peered at it, nodded to himself, smiling, and popped it into his bag. And so they rowed back to the shore. Upon the shore, the giant took out his fishing knife and gutted the fish and took out the egg sac and carefully cut open the egg sac, opened it up and began to pick out the fish's eggs, and he'd turn them over in his finger and thumb, shake his head and throw them, turn them over in his finger and thumb, shake his head and throw them until there was one left. And there he smiled to himself, "Ha ha!" But before he could say anything else, Loki piped up. "What's so special about that? What is it?" "This is just the egg of a fish," announced the giant. "Oh, it can't be merely the egg of a fish, not with how you look at it and purr over it. Show me." So the giant put it closer towards Loki, opening up his finger and thumb to show the egg, and it was just then that Loki slapped it from the giant's hand, springing out of the boat. The egg landed near the parents, where it turned back into the boy. "Run, boy," Loki called. "Run into your father's boathouse and hide there." And the boy did as he was told, running and hiding in the boathouse. The giant was enraged, glaring at Loki, glaring at the parents, but he was not going to let his prize get away. And so he ran full tilt towards the boathouse, forgetting that it was far too small for him to go inside. He crashed into it, smashing his head against a beam, finding himself stuck fast, roaring and growling to be released. Not sensing behind him, Loki had approached with the giant's own fishing knife, soon plunging it into the giant's back and killing him, saving the boy. Now Loki is a name often spoken with fear and scorn and mistrust when we think of the Viking gods. The trickster, the fire god. It was said that if you were weaving or spinning and you got your warp tangled, you got your yarn tangled, that was Loki getting into the yarn. Phrases like that. But to that family by the sea, Loki, above all else, they prayed to after that as their protector. I hope you enjoyed that story, guys. Thank you very much for joining me. It's been lovely telling it to you in this beautiful long haul. I'm going to pick you up and just show you my little fire there. Loki's helping me out there. And some artwork behind me on the walls. All of those pieces of art tell different Viking stories. So maybe I'll tell you some of those at some point. Yes, thank you very much for joining me on Folklore Thursday. As ever, if you like the story, give it a like, give it a share, subscribe to our channel if you haven't done already. We do these every Thursday for the minute. And also, as ever, if you feel like being generous, appreciating the story, instead of the usual putting out our begging caps at the end of a story on a street, as storytellers of old would do, we ask instead that if you are feeling generous, you donate to the Trussell Trust, who are doing fantastic work helping feed and provide for families who are struggling, especially with the effects of coronavirus. So yes, please, if you did enjoy this and you can afford to donate, even £1 is every penny helps. It really, really does. If you can't afford to, please just, but you want to help, just forward this link on with the Trussell Trust link, and maybe someone else can. Thank you very much again, guys, and I will see you next week for another Folklore Thursday storytelling. Bye-bye.